Welcome back, everyone, to another video continuing the story of Thrawn in the Star Wars EU. This video will cover the two novels Allegiance and Choices of One, during which the fledgling rebellion continues to fight for survival, as the Galactic Empire struggles to cover the chinks appearing in its armor. Thrawn will only appear briefly, as these two novels mainly center around Mara Jade during her time as the Hand of the Emperor, and the formation of the rogue stormtrooper squadron dubbed the Hand of Judgement. Let's dive in. The Galactic Empire is reeling. The Battle of Yavin 4 has resulted in the destruction of the Death Star and the death of Grand Moff Tarkin. Now, orders have reached Captain Kendall Ozzel on the Star Destroyer Reprisal to exact vengeance on the rebels. In the meantime, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Chewbacca are carrying out another mission for the Rebel Alliance over the planet of Teardrop. Han is frustrated they will not be paid for their work, and still has not formally declared his allegiance to the rebels. The Millennium Falcon is attacked by a gang of pirates, and they narrowly escape. However, the Reprisal then appears in the distance and hails them. The Falcon is still not widely recognized across the galaxy at this time, and Han is able to bluff their way past, and they jump to light speed. The Reprisal then lands its troops on the surface of Teardrop. Among them is the stormtrooper Derek Larone, accompanied by fellow troopers Sabirin Marcross, Taxtro Grave, Corlo Brightwater, and Joke Quiller. Larone has served the Empire for 6 years, and reflects on how in the beginning he had truly believed in the strength of Emperor Palpatine's new galactic order. However, experiences at Elris, Bumprail, and most of all Alderaan have taken a toll on him, and he has now begun to question the righteousness of the Empire. Larone and his fellow troopers land on Teardrop, searching for a rebel base. However, they find no suspicious military activity, only a tranquil town. It soon becomes apparent there is no rebel presence on the planet. The mission is a waste. However, orders soon come down from up top to kill all the townspeople. Larone is forced to follow the orders, and in the slaughter he tries to spare as many as he can. Speaking later with Grave, he again expresses his apprehensions about the Empire. Elsewhere, Mara Jade, the Hand of the Emperor, poses as a countess at a ball in Moff Glovestok's palace. She feigns drunkenness as an excuse to break away from the dance floor and begins surveilling the grounds. Donning a gray combat suit, Mara sneaks her way to Glovestok's private quarters, using the Force to shut off the security systems. She discovers a safe with several priceless pieces of art, evidence the Moff has been embezzling Imperial funds. Back on the Reprisal, Larone, Quiller, and Grave look on as an ISB unit arrives on the Star Destroyer. They do not trust the Imperial Security Bureau troops, as it was ISB Major Drelfin who had ordered the massacre on Teardrop. Drelfin himself then confronts the three troopers, who are not in battle armor. Marcross and Brightwater also arrive in street clothes to the disdain of Drelfin, and the Major then recognizes Larone. He accuses him of dereliction of duty for purposely missing shots during the Teardrop mission, and Larone defends his actions, stating the people were unarmed civilians. A tense standoff ensues, and Drelfin draws a blaster and points it at Larone. Larone slaps it away and subdues Drelfin, but the Major then begins to draw another blaster, eyes gleaming with the intent to truly kill. Larone fires first, killing Drelfin. Marcross, Brightwater, Grave, and Quiller look on in horror, knowing there is no way all of them won't be punished or even executed by the ISB for this. Larone unofficially takes charge, and the 5 troopers begin to make plans to flee the Reprisal. They hide the body and find a freighter to fly away in and desert from the Imperial military. Larone poses as Major Drelfin, and is able to trick the control station into briefly dropping the Reprisal out of hyperspace. The troopers are able to escape the Star Destroyer, and make plans to get supplies and fuel. Fortunately, their ship turns out to already be well stocked with stormtrooper armor and weapons, as well as 500,000 credits. Marcross suggests they travel to Shelconqua in the Shelsha sector first, and the rest of the crew agree after some deliberation. Elsewhere, Emperor Palpatine is unsurprised at the news of Glovestok's crimes, and Mara then asks for permission to further investigate the stolen art. She recognizes the 6 pieces as part of a collection of 10 stolen from a rebel base 5 years ago, coincidentally in the Shelsha sector. Palpatine allows for her to continue the investigation, and she heads to a computer station to continue her research. Also there is Darth Vader, who Mara has come to believe dislikes her. He may suspect she is trying to supplant him as the Emperor's favored servant, but Mara is simply devoted to Palpatine's vision of the Empire. Vader departs, and Mara returns to the computers. Her curiosity gets the best of her, and she turns to Vader's abandoned station to find he was searching for the whereabouts of one Luke Skywalker. Han returns to a rebel hideout, where he is greeted by Leia Organa, one of the few welcome sights for him in the rebellion. He learns the Alliance Supreme Commander Mon Mothma has asked to meet with him, Luke, and Leia. It seems everyone has assumed Han has aligned with the rebellion, including the young Luke. Mothma briefs the three on a plan pitched to the rebellion by Yiro Shiv Kairi of the Republic Redux, stationed in the Shelsa sector. The plan is opposed by two other groups in Yiro's sector, who will pull out of the rebellion if it is accepted. Mon Mothma plans to send in Leia as a diplomatic mediator, and also to figure out what the plan actually is. Han and Luke will escort her under a low profile, something Han is disgruntled about. Meanwhile, the stormtrooper deserters stop at the world of Drunos for supplies. Larone and Grave venture out while the others stay on board. They see several farmers leaving the cargo hub to trek back to their farmlands. However, they are then attacked by a gang of swoop riders streaming out from two nearby freighters, indicating they are part of an organized group. Larone feels driven to help the farmers, and radios the others for support. The soldiers spring into action and easily drive the pirates away. However, they have to now fly away from Drunos prematurely. They decide to stick together, with Larone as their leader. Back on the surface though, it is revealed the farmers are actually Rebel Alliance operatives. One of them, named Porter, recognized the pirates as affiliated with the Blood Scars, and also Larone's team as stormtroopers. Meanwhile, Mara is able to track down the auction house in the Shelsha sector that is holding Glovstoke's art. She secures a meeting with Bertana Bertraub, the overseer of the warehouse security. Mara is taken to the auction house overseer, the brother of Bertraub. They try to intimidate her into revealing who she works for, but Mara quickly subdues their thugs and holds the brothers at blaster point. They confess they work with a pirate named Caldra, and Mara stuns them and leaves the warehouse. She drives to another warehouse and draws her purple lightsaber. Mara breaks inside the cargo bay and surveils the pirates at work, quickly singling out the leader, Caldra. She tracks several of the pirates to another freighter, and Mara manages to sneak on board as a stowaway. She is nearly spotted by the Lieutenant Tanis, but she knocks him out just in time. Mara secures her hiding spot on the ship and begins to wait, for she had overheard Caldra mention they plan to attack a target in 5 days. Porter's report reaches General Raikan of the Rebellion, as well as Leia and Luke. They decide to plan to take down the pirates ravaging the Shelsa sector to build good faith in the upcoming talks with Yiro Shiv Kairi. Luke pushes for Han to be sent to gather intel on the pirates, and Leia then advocates for Luke to accompany him instead of her. Larone and his companions fly next to Ranklage to finish consolidating their supplies. They land in the city of Janusar. It is a testy welcome they receive, with 5 local patrollers and an officer greeting them when they disembark. The officer immediately demands a 250 credit docking fee, adding on several more in a blatant attempt to extort them for money. After they leave, Larone and the others learn from a local the extortion ring is controlled by the patroller chief Kav Saran. Larone decides to help the locals, recalling his oath to serve the Empire. He coordinates with the local who helped them to gather a large crowd outside Patroller Central. The group slowly shifts to fighting the local injustices they encounter in Imperial space, acting as a hand of justice. Later, Larone shuttles the others over to Patroller Central. The other 4 deserters confront the patrollers in front in stormtrooper armor, as Larone links up with the local resistance leaders. He reinstates the former police chief Colonel Atmino. Larone then confronts Kav Saran, who seems to not be bothered by the mob outside. He declares the patroller chief to be under arrest as his companions stride in. There is a brief firefight, and Kav Saran is killed. Control is given back to the people of Ranklage, and Larone learns Kav Saran was connected with the Bloodscar pirates. As they depart, Larone simply tells Atmino his group is called the Hand of Judgement. Returning to their ship, the troopers come to realize the Bloodscars may have an extensive network being helped with outside funding. Believing they may be allied with the rebels, they decide to return to Drunos to pursue more leads. At the same time, Han and Luke are also en route to Drunos on their own mission. They are unaware that Chief Administrator Willem Disra of the Shelsha sector has formed a partnership with the pirate Caldra. He is briefed on the overthrow of Kavsaron by the Hand of Judgement, which seems to be an unofficial squadron of stormtroopers. The poking around of a mysterious Imperial agent as well also complicates matters, but Disra is confident in his plans, which involve the overthrow of Sector Governor Chord, will succeed. Meanwhile, Mara sneaks around the ship of pirates Shako and Tanis, searching for a data card of Caldra. The attack is suddenly launched one day early. She emerges from hiding at last and attacks Shako and Tanis in the cockpit. They are easily defeated, and Mara subdues Tanis before glancing out the window. The pirates have attacked a large Rendili freighter, and Mara then hails the ship. She discovers they are transporting military supplies that Caldra had hoped to steal, some 50 AT-ST walkers. Mara orders the captain to call the nearest Imperial ship, which happens to be the Star Destroyer Reprisal. Tanis is interrogated and reveals the walkers were to be transported to someone called the Commodore. Captain Ozzel of the Reprisal then patches in, and informs Mara they will arrive at her coordinates in about 10 hours. The communication with Mara greatly bothers Ozzel, for he does not want her to discover that 5 stormtroopers under his command have deserted. He and Major Drelfin's superior, Colonel Someril, decide to try and cover up the murder to preserve their respective ranks. Larone and the Hand of Judgment return to Drunos to begin hunting down the Bloodscars. They spot one of the farmers they saved a while back in a bar, as Larone finds intel that suggests someone may be planning to attack a consolidated repository. At the same time, Han and Luke also land on Drunos and link up with Porter. As they are briefed on the attack, Luke suddenly hears Ben Kenobi's voice in his head, warning him of danger. His attention is drawn to 3 thugs in the corner of a cantina, who seem to be monitoring several off-duty consolidated security guards. Luke realizes the bank repository may be robbed soon, and urges Han to help him stop it. They are, unknowingly, being observed the whole time by Larone and Grave. Then, an explosion goes off outside, and the 3 thugs rise and draw blasters. Luke then draws his lightsaber, instantly grabbing the attention of everyone in the bar. Han attacks one of the thugs as Larone shoots one of the others. Luke, Han, Porter, and Chewbacca then slip out of a back door as the other members of the Hand of Judgment arrive. Larone orders them to track down the mysterious group of 4, sensing there is something he is missing about the whole situation. Mara is picked up by the Reprisal, and asks for a squad of stormtroopers familiar with Rendili freighters. She plans on taking the freighter to the Bloodscar's base, posing undercover. It is quickly discovered that Someril is affiliated with the ISB, and she decides to take the pirate Tanis along. Mara knows Caldra is being funded by some higher power, and is determined to figure out who. Elsewhere, Ozzo and Someril float the idea of killing Mara, but decide instead to give her 2 stormtroopers who will in secret prevent her from contacting the Imperial Center. Meanwhile, Leia meets Shiv Kairi's ship at a designated location. It is revealed Shiv Kairi is planning to orchestrate for the entire Shelsa sector to join the rebellion. This has apparently been arranged for the assistance of Governor Chord, and would be a devastating blow to the Empire. Unfortunately, the rebellion is unaware the assistant is the traitorous Chief Administrator Disra, who instead plans to defect to the Empire. Leia is then asked to travel to Shelconqua to talk with Governor Chord. The governor has not been told of her identity yet, and they must move quickly as Disra has implied the sector's preparations are nearly complete. However, the 2 other groups still threaten to pull out of the rebellion if Shiv Kairi's plan goes through, and Shiv Kairi himself then implies his group will leave if Leia does not agree to help. Either way, the Shelsha sector will not be unified. To stall, Leia agrees to go to Shelconqua to see the situation for herself. In the meantime, Han, Luke, and Chewbacca arrive in the system, tracked by the Hand of Judgment. They immediately encounter several pirate ships, and a firefight breaks out. During the battle, Luke practices falling into the Force, and detects the onlooking Hand of Judgment ship. The Hand of Judgment also joins the fighting, aiming their freighters' guns at the pirates as well. The pirate ships are destroyed, with one being left scuttled for interrogation. Larone and his companions hail the Falcon and board the pirate ship first. They learn the Bloodscars and Caldra have been amassing pirates across the sector for something big. Luke and Han then board and meet the Hand of Judgment. Neither group reveals their true identity, and the Hand of Judgment then decides to detain Luke, Han, and Chewbacca, not fully trusting their story of being independent shippers of cargo. The troopers speculate Luke may be the mysterious Hand of the Emperor rumored to have entered the war, and they decide to set a course for Japarin. Japarin is also where Mara is flying with Tanis and 2 ISB men. She has intel the Bloodscars have a large mining complex there, and learns more of the full extent of Kaldra's network. It may comprise of more than 100 gangs, all in the Shelsha sector. Mara's stolen ship is granted permission to land, and she sends Tanis and the ISB troopers ahead. Mara hides her lightsaber in the ship, and they are then greeted by a squad of pirates. They are taken to the Commodore, who begins to pick apart Mara's story. Kaldra himself then arrives, as Mara's identity as an Imperial agent is exposed. Meanwhile, Leia is flown to Makron City for the meeting. She meets Disra, who immediately recognizes her and sees a tremendous opportunity. Leia asks him for assurances their sector can defy the Empire, but then abruptly cuts the meeting short. After she and her party leave, Disra immediately gives orders for the spaceport to be shut down, intending Leia to become trapped on Shelconqua. Leia in the meantime confides to Shiv Kyrie she sensed something off about Disra. She knows Disra recognized her, and has deduced that he, and presumably Chord as well, plans to turn her into the Empire. Leia urges the local Adarians to leave the planet as soon as possible, but they soon learn humans have been banned from space travel. At the same time, Disra rushes back to his office and attempts to hail the Imperial Palace, instead being rerouted to Darth Vader's personal Star Destroyer, Executor. Elsewhere, Mara has become a prisoner of the Commodore and the Bloodscars. One evening, she slips out back to her ship to find her lightsaber gone. Mara changes course and finds the base's command center, still looking for a lead on the Commodore and Kaldra's patron. She finds a console room, but is then ambushed by the ISB soldiers, acting on orders from the reprisal commanders to silence her as she learned of the stormtrooper desertions. However, the Commodore and his men arrive and kill the ISB soldiers. Mara then unleashes her force powers, freeing a captive Tanis and reclaiming her lightsaber. The Commodore flees, as well as Mara and Tanis. However, they then run into another trap laid out this time by Kaldra. He suddenly turns and runs, and green turbo laser fire begins to strike the pirate base. Meanwhile, Luke suddenly awakens on the Hand of Judgment ship, hearing Ben Kenobi's voice warning him of Leia's predicament on Shelconqua. Again, he lets the Force guide him, and with Ben's help, he is somehow able to find a hidden weapons cache on the ship. Luke discovers Larone and the others' Imperial Stormtrooper armor, and takes a small blaster. Their ship arrives at Japarin, and the crew is stunned to find the reprisal already there. It has opened fire on the pirate base below, and also trained several guns on their freighter. The Hand of Judgment tries evasive maneuvers, and Han then takes charge and orders Chewbacca to fly out in the Falcon. Chewbacca is able to distract the reprisal and baits it and Ozzel into chasing him to the Alderaan system. The Star Destroyer vanishes into hyperspace, leaving behind its TIE fighters to clean up the pirate base. Han pilots them closer to the base, where below Mara and Tanis have narrowly survived the reprisals' bombardment. The grounds are destroyed, and Mara begins to search through the rubble for any intact data cards. The Commodore's body is found in a bunker, where she discovers a communication intended for Shelconqua. However, her stolen freighter has also been destroyed, and Mara is now stranded with a badly wounded Tanis. She manages to then find a small emergency escape fighter just as Han, Luke, and the Hand of Judgment land on the surface. Han and Luke are told of the plot to recruit pirates in the sector as they also find the trail leading back to Shelconqua. For a brief moment, Han sees a chance to finally leave the rebellion, but his loyalty to Luke and Leia, however grudging, overrides it as he asks to accompany the Hand to the planet. Han and Luke reveal their affiliations with the rebellion to the Hand, and the two groups form a tentative alliance over their disapproval of how the Empire treats its citizens. Then, Chewbacca returns in the Falcon. He is ordered to rendezvous with everyone at Shelconqua as Han and Luke begin to plan how they will rescue Leia. At the same time, Mara is able to reach hyperspace, determined to exact vengeance on Governor Chord. Tanis dies from his wounds, and she jettisons his body into space. On Shelconqua, Shiv Kyrie and Leia look for ways to keep her in hiding. It turns out Shiv Kyrie has found a job for Leia as a waitress in a tap cafe. That evening, she learns that several Imperial garrisons and possibly a Star Destroyer may be on their way, making their potential escape nearly impossible. The Hand of Judgment arrives at Shelconqua, with Marcross directing them towards the Governor's Palace. They drop out of hyperspace and are redirected to another landing zone, along the way noticing Darth Vader's Executor flagship hovering in orbit. Larone remains steadfast on unrooting the pirate conspiracy, deciding that they will try to infiltrate Vader's personal 501st Stormtrooper unit. Han and Luke will pose as their captured informants and cover. Mara also arrives at Shelconqua and immediately flies over to the Executor for an audience with Darth Vader. She asks for assurances Vader won't interfere in her mission, but goes too far. Vader snaps, thinking Mara is trying to capture Leia for herself, and attacks the hand of the Emperor. Mara rolls away, killing the lights to interfere with Vader's suit sensors. She manages to talk Vader down, alerting him of Chord recruiting pirate gangs to attack Imperial military shipments. Vader tells her of Leia's presence below and Disra's treachery, and the two servants of the Emperor part ways. Stormtroopers begin to land in the capital city, tightening the net around Leia. Disra receives a call from Caldra, who is revealed to have survived the reprisals attack. He has also managed to obtain the 50 original stolen ATSTs. Disra reroutes Caldra to land directly at the palace, a maneuver observed by Mara from above. She immediately deduces Caldra is in the ship, and reroutes him with her authority as Hand. Mara then takes a ship herself to confront him on the surface. The Hand, Luke, and Han are also on the surface of Shelconqua as Mara descends and slowly approaches Caldra's ship. Its cargo bay suddenly explodes, and out of the smoke an ATST rises and opens fire on her. Its heavy guns drive her back, and Caldra then peels away for a nearby landing field, looking for a speeder to escape in. Mara gets a speeder of her own and chases after him, but a volley of fire from the walker hits her, forcing a crash landing. The crash is seen by the Hand of Judgment. Larone releases Han and Luke, telling them to find their friend as he leads his men towards the crash site. They see Mara and mistake her for Han and Luke's contact, resolving to help her take down the ATST. However, upon linking up with her, they recognize her to be the Emperor's Hand. Meanwhile, Luke tracks Leia through the Force and finds her in the cafe. They race away to the spaceport where Chewbacca is waiting. Along the way, they overhear the battle with the ATST, where Imperial troops have also arrived to take out the rogue walker. Additionally, it turns out Chewbacca has taken the Hand's freighter there to help Larone and the others. All the parties converge on the ATST, and eventually Mara makes it up to the cockpit. However, she finds Caldra gone, the walker put on auto-guide. She commandeers the Hand of Judgment, opting to not turn the deserters in, and they search the spaceport for Caldra's ship, the Happer's Way stolen from Mara back on the pirate base. There they find no sign of the pirate, but Mara is able to reclaim her gear. She then leads the stormtroopers under her command to the governor's palace to take down Chord. Mara questions the Hand, learning they have also been tracking the blood scars. In the meantime, Disra enters his office to find Caldra at his computer. He is warned the Hand of the Emperor is on her way, and decides to send Caldra out to intercept her. Mara's force closes in on the palace, and she and the Hand manage to break in through Chord's gardens. However, their cover is soon blown as several sentries see them and open fire. Mara sends the Hand ahead to find Chord and kill him. Caldra appears and confronts Mara again. He reveals he wants out of the conspiracy, offering to expose Disra in exchange for being allowed to escape the planet. She is surprised to learn Disra has been the mastermind behind everything, as well as how the Hand deserted the reprisal. Mara, however, doesn't take up Caldra's offer, and the pirate triggers an explosion behind her. She leaps away, and then doubles back and ambushes Caldra. Mara kills his thugs, and Caldra asks to fight her hand-to-hand. She casts down her lightsaber, but Caldra then draws out a blaster and fires off a last, desperate shot. Mara simply recalls her lightsaber and easily deflects it, killing Caldra. Elsewhere, the Hand of Judgment storm into a ballroom, where a stunned Governor Chord is hosting a dinner reception. They declare Chord to be guilty of treason and sentence him to death, but then Marcross turns and gives his weapon to the governor, ordering the troopers to drop their guns. As the others stand down, he reveals himself to be the nephew of Chord as Mara quietly makes it to the ballroom. She throws a mist canister, and the room erupts into chaos. Larone is able to corner Chord and decides to let him stand trial. Darth Vader then arrives, having received an account of Chord's treason from Disra himself. He allows Mara to retain command over the Hand of Judgment, and gives orders for the palace to be searched. Meanwhile, Han, Leia, Luke, and Chewbacca have been hiding out on the Hand's freighter. Leia again asks Han to formally join the rebellion, revealing that Chewbacca has decided to join the rebels. Han is stirred, and begins to seriously consider joining for the sake of his first mate, and even Leia herself. Elsewhere, Mara lets the Hand of Judgment free, allowing them to leave Shelconqua in exchange for their help in her mission. And then she and Darth Vader attend an audience with Emperor Palpatine, briefing him on how Leia was not captured and perhaps may have been a lie fabricated by Disra the entire time. They then depart, with Mara heading to her quarters to be briefed on her next mission. Commander Gilad Palaeon oversees the Star Destroyer Chimera as it drops out of hyperspace. His ship is presently tasked with a peculiar mission of passenger transport, a seemingly menial effort for their ship of massive power. However, it seems the orders have come directly from Admiral Zarin on the ISD Predominant. The Chimera meets the light freighter Salaban's Hope, which soon appears to be being chased by 6 unidentified ships. On board is their target, Lord Odo, a member of the Imperial Court. Odo is safely secured on the Star Destroyer, and meets Palaeon wearing simple clothing and a full mask that covers his face. The Lord requests his identity remain a secret, and Palaeon cannot bring himself to fully trust him yet. They travel for some 10 hours, arriving at an unassuming world where the Chimera hovers above in space. Odo travels down to the surface, with Palaeon and his officers still in the dark as to the Lord's objective. Captain Druson reveals they don't even have a conclusive biomarker on Odo, much to the concern of Palaeon. Later, he is summoned to the bridge of the Chimera to learn the ship will act as the personal transport of Lord Odo in his mysterious mission, and that Odo will also be granted full command over the Star Destroyer. Their first destination will be the Runa system. Elsewhere in the galaxy, Senior Captain Thrawn and his freighter pilot George Cardass meet with Emperor Palpatine. Thrawn looks over a forested landscape, assessing an Imperial force field being used to protect a construction site. Above the world hovers a massive sphere under construction, eerily resembling a second Death Star. Thrawn advises the Emperor to make the security around the force field generator impenetrable, but Palpatine shakes it off, instead regarding the perceived weakness as a trap. The Chiss captain then changes subjects to the alien warlord Nuso Esva, who has been gaining power in the unknown regions. Thrawn believes Esva to be a greater threat to the Empire than even the Rebellion, and asks Palpatine for 6 Star Destroyers to take him down. Palpatine instead tells him to go to Darth Vader for aid, and orders Cardass to fly them back to the Predominant. Meanwhile, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Leia Organa are on another mission for the Rebellion. They must find a new location for the Rebellion's central base. As Han is still not officially signed on with the movement, however, he is not told of the mission's true objective until later on. They raid a mining clearinghouse and return to General Rykon with a list of potential planets. Han confronts him about his involvement with the Rebellion, seeking the authority of a commanding officer. Rykon tells him he must grow as a leader of soldiers first, and be prepared to send good men to die for the cause. Han, Leia, and Luke are then introduced to Master Axlon, a former governor of Alderaan. Axlon reveals that Governor Bidor Feroz of the Kendora sector near the Outer Rim has offered them a full military base on Pol Minor. However, that space may soon be threatened by the warlord Nuso Esva. Feroz is allegedly offering this out of pure goodwill, but the Rebellion commanders are wary of a trap. Axlon volunteers to head out and meet Feroz himself, and Rykon decides that Han and Chewbacca will serve as his escort in the Falcon. Han departs, but then Axlon privately approaches Luke and manages to convince him to come on the mission as well. He will fly in a separate Z-95 Headhunter, and despite his apprehension, Luke agrees to the plan. Elsewhere, the Hand of the Emperor reaches the homestretch of her latest mission for the Empire. Mara Jade holds a corrupt Imperial judge at Blaster Point, having exposed his record of extortion and corruption. The judge desperately tries to attack her, and Mara draws her lightsaber and ends his life. Palpatine's voice then reaches out to her in her mind, and telepathically she updates him on her mission status. Mara is given a new assignment. For now, Palpatine suspects Governor Feroz of colluding with the rebels. As she reviews the intel on the Kendora sector, Mara realizes how difficult it will be to infiltrate the world of Pol Major. She will likely need backup Imperial forces to help her, and she narrows down her list of potential options to the Hand of Judgement. Ever since the fiasco on Shelconqua, the deserter Larone and his companions have been quietly dispensing justice throughout the Empire, putting down corruption where they can. Mara has been tracking their movements for months, and decides to commission them to accompany her to Pol Major. Reaching out with the Force, she is able to deduce they are heading for El Legazo. Mara travels to the small world and begins to wait for the hand to show itself. As for Larone himself, he is bogged down in a fierce firefight with his companions against a band of 50 mercenaries. They are able to defeat them to reclaim farmland for some locals, and Larone notes how their supplies and, most importantly, stockpile of credits are starting to dwindle. The time of the Hand of Judgment is rapidly approaching its end. Larone decides they will do 2 last missions before going into hiding. They fly first to the planet of Picarin, but are immediately ambushed when they land, Larone falling unconscious from a mysterious gas. Meanwhile, the Chimera continues to ferry around Lord Odo, and their next destination turns out to be the Poln system in the Candoris sector. A still suspicious Palaeon decides to trail Odo's pilot Soro, but is then surprisingly summoned by Odo to help him move to different quarters. It is an odd request for a senior bridge officer like Palaeon, but he agrees in order to monitor Odo further. Elsewhere, the Falcon arrives at the Poln system to meet with Pharaohs. Larone awakens to find 4 members of the Hand of Judgment captured, though unharmed and Brightwater is missing. Their captor is Bach Yost, the recently elected chancellor of a district on El Legazo. Then, Mara appears and quickly dispatches the guards. She forces a terrified Yost to step down from his position and hold a new election, and then frees Larone and the others. They rescue Brightwater, and the Hand falls under Mara's command for her mission in the Poln system. Elsewhere, Han escorts an independent-minded Axelon through Whitestone City, the capital of Poln Major. He has already deduced Luke is following them, and they meet up at the spaceport. Axelon decides to take Luke to the meeting with Pharaohs and orders Han and Chewbacca to stay behind. Han then takes the Falcon to Poln Minor to scout the abandoned mines and assess whether they can serve as suitable military bases. Luke and Axelon meet with Pharaohs in a cantina, with Luke monitoring the talks from a distance. In the Force, he senses a strange undercurrent of betrayal, but cannot discern anything more. Axelon and Pharaohs decide to assess the Anyat-En facilities on Poln Minor, which is coincidentally the same area Han and Chewbacca are searching. As the Chimera also closes in on the system, Palaeon learns from Captain Druson that Odo's orders seem to have come directly from the Emperor himself. Unknown to both of them, however, the Star Destroyer is also being tracked by Thrawn and Kardas. Kardas reveals he is dying, and even though he has built a large smuggling network, he worries his life has been wasted. His network is safe in the hands of his lieutenant Talon Karrde, and Thrawn then confides to him he is the only one he trusts. Han and Chewbacca venture into the Anyat-En complex, where they soon begin to hear voices in the distance. They are then confronted by several rebel soldiers, and most surprisingly of all, Leia. She has put together an advance team to scout the mining site as well, and she and Han are then shown a hidden cache of military equipment. It leads to a massive industrial complex designed for war, and Rykon is hailed to send a full escort team to the site. Mara and the Hand of Judgment also arrive at Poln Major to begin investigating Pharaohs. The Hand also notes the Millennium Falcon's presence on the world. Larone comes across several aliens arguing in a market, seemingly over some knives. After a brief scuffle, he diffuses the situation. The knife sellers approach him in gratitude, and reveal they come from the unknown regions. They had fled their homeworld to escape the warlord Nuso Esva, and now give Larone a knife as a gift. Mara, in the meantime, scouts Pharaohs' palace and its extensive security. Palaeon and the Chimera finally make it to the Poln system, where they soon detect the rebel ships in the area. He receives orders from Odo they are to pass over Poln Minor, and then jump into the unknown regions. Palaeon still does not trust Odo, as at the same time Thrawn and Kardas also arrive and assess the rebel presence. Thrawn instructs his pilot to prepare to travel to the unknown regions as well, ominously planning to let Nuso Esva carry out his plans without interference. On the surface, Leia and the rebels watch with bated breath as the Chimera jumps to hyperspace. She senses that many parties may soon be interested in Pharaohs' deal with the Alliance, and calls a disgruntled Han to assess the defenses of Poln Major via smuggler contacts. He drops into a town and enters a cantina, where he is approached by a Duros who used to work for Jabba the Hutt. Han learns there is someone else on the planet who seems to be trying to install missiles on several starfighters, and that they may not be aligned with the rebellion. Stalling for time, Han arranges for a meeting with the shadowy figure and calls Leia to update her. They plan for a fake missile tech to be sent to Han, but he is surprised when Leia herself shows up. Han and Leia meet the clients and are swept away for a 6-hour journey. They are taken to a large cavern with several large starships. Leia deduces they are relatively close to Anyat N, and they begin scoping the grounds. Chewbacca, in the meantime, slips away and warns Luke that Leia and Han have been taken away. Luke still has his hands tied down by the demanding Axlon, who reveals that Pharos fears his life to be in danger from an Imperial agent wielding a lightsaber. The following day, Larone and the Hand wait in the streets near the governor's palace for Mara to make her move. They dodge some stormtroopers and find her in an alley. Larone and Marcross take some stormtrooper armor and suit up, with Mara posing as their prisoner. They infiltrate the palace grounds, and Mara soon finds the interrogation wing. She finds an abandoned computer and is able to find records substantiating Pharos' new dealings with the rebellion. After exposing Chord, Mara now worries if this is a sign Palpatine's empire may be weakening from within. Then, Axlon enters the building as well. Mara finds him and his escort and is able to accompany them to Pharos' office. She promptly kicks Axlon out and confronts Pharos, who instantly recognizes her as the Emperor's Hand. He reveals his deal with the Alliance was done out of blackmail, for his wife and daughter were kidnapped 3 weeks ago. Again, the trail leads to Nuso Esfa, who Pharos believes may be manipulating the rebellion as well. Mara leaves the office, but is immediately attacked by armed mercenaries. She manages to avoid their initial onslaught, and rushes back inside the office with Axlon and Pharos. Outside, Luke is monitoring the palace gates to try and catch the Imperial agent. He suddenly hears a voice crying out that the governor has died, and that the rebellion has triumphed. A stranger appears from behind Luke and grabs his hand, hoisting it in the air and proclaiming the bewildered Jedi as the hero who took down Pharos. To the horror of Luke, the crowd begins to cheer his name, and news of the mob forming soon reaches Larone and the Hand. They move to rescue Luke, who feels powerless to do anything or even reclaim his lightsaber from the man who has framed him. Stormtroopers are called into the palace, and the man gloats the mob will be gunned down, seemingly in the name of the rebellion. Luke attacks the man and is able to wrest away his lightsaber. Several thugs appear on speeders and rush the man away just as the Hand arrives to rendezvous with Luke. After assessing the new threat of Esfa, they split up, Luke calling out to the Force for guidance on his next steps. Meanwhile, Mara continues to defend Pharos and Axlon from the waves of attackers. The Hand arrives in time to provide covering fire and drive the thugs away. Mara reveals Pharos was set up to commit treason, and finds the governor's hidden escape door. News of the trouble on Pol Major reaches Han and Leia, who have been assisting with missile installation on the ships. Mara races through several underground tunnels beneath the palace grounds with Axlon and Pharos, and links up with the Hand again in the cellar of a cafe. She begins investigating for potential traitors in the palace, leaving the others back in the cellar. The Chimera reaches the unknown regions, Peleon wary of possible ambushes or attacks. Odo continues to have unquestioned access in the Star Destroyer, even to the control room for its ion drive engines. Odo claims he believes the alien Trukri, Nuso Esfa stealth operatives, may have infiltrated the ship. Peleon allows him to investigate, but still keeps a close eye on Odo. Elsewhere, Luke resorts to calling Larone. Axlon seizes Larone's comlink and commands Luke to come to the cafe immediately. Feeling bound by a sense of duty, Luke obeys the order. Larone admits they could use his skills in a battle, but then suddenly, Axlon pulls out a small blaster and shoots Grave, Quiller, and Marcross, wounding all 3. Larone is forced to stand down, and Axlon reveals he had been told by the Emperor the Hand was to kill Pharos, with Luke taking the fall. Meanwhile, Mara in the palace continues to try and unravel the conspiracy surrounding Pharos and Nuso Esfa. As Axlon waits for Luke to arrive, Larone tries to stall for time by getting him to unveil the full plot. Axlon tells him he is waiting for Luke so he can take his lightsaber to kill Pharos. He is working with Nuso Esfa, who will apparently bring his fleet into the rebellion after settling some business with the Empire. Pharos then causes some stormtrooper armor to fall, momentarily distracting Axlon. Brightwater flips a knife into the air, and Quiller is able to catch it and stab Axlon to death. The crisis is averted, but 3 of the troopers are still wounded and in need of medical attention. Larone calls Luke and tells him of Axlon's treachery, with the news meaning things have gone from bad to worse for the rebellion. It seems a battle with Nuso Esfa and the Empire is inevitable, and Han and Leia are still missing. Mara is briefed, and a tenuous alliance forms again between Luke and the Hand of Judgement. Meanwhile, Han and Leia are confronted by several of the mercenaries. Han hurls a hydro spanner at them and opens fire with a blaster, and he and Leia flee to one of the ships. Han manages to shakily bring it into the air as more mercenaries arrive to take them down. At the same time, the Chimera drops out of hyperspace right on the outskirts of a raging battle, with the Star Destroyer Admonitor in the thick of it. Its captain, Voss Park, hails Palaeon and asks for aid. Odo arrives at the bridge and identifies several of the attacking ships as belonging to Nuso Esfa. It is then revealed that Park's superior is none other than Senior Captain Thrawn, and a transmission reaches both ships, hailing them to Poln Major to address the rebel incursion there. Park reluctantly agrees to set sail for the system, and both forces retreat to return to Poln Major. As the Empire converges on the planet, Mara searches for Ferraz's family in his palace, believing them to be actually held somewhere in the grounds. The Hand is able to link up with Chewbacca for a bacta tank and treat their wounded. Several True Kree aliens then make it to the cafe to help in their fight, and they are all given stormtrooper armor and weapons. Mara attacks Major Pakri, who she suspects had a hand in kidnapping Ferraz's family. Pakri confesses to placing them in protective custody, but then more mercenaries appear and open fire. Mara overcomes them, but in the chaos, Pakri makes a run for it. Luke, meanwhile, tracks one of the mercenary leaders as Han and Leia learn of Axlon's betrayal. The rebellion officers brace for the impending attack by Nuso Esfa as Han and Leia are able to rendezvous with several X-Wings and make it out of the cavern. However, they must still extract all the military supplies they found earlier, a long and arduous process that will delay their departure considerably. Leia is able to pinpoint the location of the missile ships to be somewhere near the surface, and plans are made to take them out with some of the new acquired ships. However, the enemy still has a dreadnought and Golan defense station, and Han proposes he and Chewbacca commandeer the Golan and distract the dreadnought. It will buy time for the rebels to escape, and the strategy is approved by High Command. Luke continues to stake out the mercenary hideout, reporting to Larone back in the cafe. Mara is able to converge on the same location, where she believes Ferraz's family is being held under heavy guard. However, Larone then informs her Ferraz contacted Pakri in a desperate attempt to save his family, and their hideout is now compromised. In the meantime, Park and Palaeon's forces arrive at the Poln system. The cafe is attacked as Han and Chewbacca fly towards the Golan. In the skies above, they see the arrival of the Imperial forces. Han bluffs his way onto the Golan by pretending to be Axlon, as Leia and Wedge Antilles prepare for the run to destroy the missile ships. Palaeon, meanwhile, storms to Odo's quarters, but then receives reports of explosions going off in the engine control centers. The Chimera comes under attack from saboteurs, and he rushes back to the bridge to find it in chaos and Captain Druson badly wounded. As Druson dies, he reveals that Odo is a fraud. Some third party he led on board in the hopes that victory over the rebellion would see him promoted to Admiral. Palaeon hails the emergency comlink channel, and is surprised when Senior Captain Thrawn answers him. Thrawn reveals Odo has been Nuso Esfa the entire time, and takes command to prevent Esfa from escaping the Chimera. Palaeon is able to track Esfa down owing to his distinctive mask. He sneaks up behind the warlord and manages to stab him in the neck, but it turns out to be the pilot Soro, and Esfa himself then enters the comm channel. Thrawn, hovering outside in his freighter still, orders Palaeon back to the bridge, where he discovers the helm station destroyed. Esfa has sent the Star Destroyer on a collision course with the Golan defense station orbiting Poln Major. His plan is to force Thrawn to allow for either the Chimera or the defense station, or both, to open fire on the other to avoid a collision. It will be an unmitigated disaster, one that will destroy Thrawn's military reputation. Back on the surface, Luke and Mara from their separate vantage points watch as the mercenaries in the cavern descend into chaos, the attack on the Hand at the cafe unsuccessful. Mara triggers several explosions, and then makes her move to find the governor's family. Meanwhile, Han in the Golan defense station sees the Chimera bearing down on them. He orders for torpedoes to be launched, not at the Star Destroyer but perpendicular to its flight course in the hopes the station will be thrust out of the way. Thrawn in the meantime remains calm as ever, preparing to save both the Golan and the Chimera somehow. Back on the surface, Leia and Wedge encounter fierce resistance from the missile ships as they fly in on the attack. A second assault also falls upon the Hand of Judgment and their alien allies in the cafe. In the fierce firefight, a True Kree sacrifices itself to save Larone's life. They manage to drive the attackers away, But the fight is far from over. In the cavern, Luke is able to track down Pharaoh's wife and daughter through the Force, but two mercenaries soon approach the prisoners to execute them. Luke sheds his cover and charges them. The Force grants him a flash of insight and guides his motions, and Luke deflects their blaster fire right back at them. He knocks them both out, and feels a sense of relief that at last he has been able to channel the Force in a live combat situation. All this is observed from a distance by Mara, and she is stunned to see Luke wielding a lightsaber. Mara watches Luke continue on, and from a distance throws him her blaster. Luke is able to spot her and provide covering fire as Mara's hiding spot becomes exposed. However, Luke himself becomes pinned down, and now Mara draws her lightsaber to rush to his aid. Meanwhile, Palaeon gives orders for the Chimera to train its tractor beams on Thrawn's freighter Lost Reef. Thrawn directs him again, stating the Chimera will be dragged slightly towards the ship in the process and be skewed from Ezva's programmed path. As more alien ships stream into the system, the missile ships are also ready to launch. If they are able to open fire on the Chimera, it may swing the battle back to Ezva's favor. Han on the Golan, however, makes a snap decision and decides to help the Empire take down Ezva, recognizing the Warlord as the greater threat for the time being. He contacts Leia and Rebel Command and orders them to pull out of the cavern. The Rebel fighters retreat, and Han orders for the Golan to open fire on the emerging missile ships. Explosions rock Pol Minor as the threat is destroyed, saving Thrawn and the Chimera. Elsewhere, Luke looks up to see Mara falling upon the gunmen, amazed at her skill in combat. Together, they secure the Governor's family and make contact with the Hand. Above, Nuso Ezva's fleet arrives in full might, significantly outnumbering the battered Imperial forces. As Thrawn banters with Ezva despite the considerable odds against him, Palaeon is informed that Thrawn's signal seems to be unnaturally boosted, sending his talks with Ezva across space and into the unknown regions. He realizes Thrawn has projected Ezva's plan of domination to the Warlord's potential allies, thereby weakening his future campaigns. Then, new signals come in from hyperspace. A full squadron of Star Destroyers arrives, the notorious Death Squadron commanded by Darth Vader and the Executor. Ezva's fleet is no match for the Imperial Armada and is routed. However, in the midst of the battle, the rebels are able to escape with their new military supplies, something Darth Vader is furious about. Thrawn is able to calm the Sith by then providing him a list given to him by Pharaohs. It is the supplies taken by the rebels, and based on the technical readouts implies the rebellion's next base will be on a cold, uninhabitable world. Vader is satisfied with this intel and departs. Thrawn then decides to depart into the unknown regions to hunt down Ezva, who still has 2 fleets to his name. George Kardas, still looking to turn his life around, plans to travel to the Cathol Rift to search for a cure to his affliction. Thrawn then asks him to first travel to Runa, where he reveals Ezva's pilot Soro's family has been held hostage. Mara clears Pharaohs of the charges of treason, and waits for the Hand to make a rendezvous with her. However, her comlink pings, and she is ordered by Palpatine to return to the Imperial Center. It turns out Larona and the Hand have been taken on board the Admonitor, where Thrawn asks them to fall under his command. He praises their deeds in combat, and asks them to train the alien soldiers like the True Kree, who have followed his orders from the very start. Thrawn hopes to incorporate aliens into the stormtrooper ranks, and it is decided the new unit will be called the 501st, independent of Darth Vader's own 501st contingent. And last of all, for his heroism in the battle and leadership in combat, Han Solo is formally inducted into the rebellion as a lieutenant.